Today we're going to talk about how to become a millionaire in your 20s because I am now 28. I achieved millionaire status for whatever that is worth at the age of 26. And I feel like I have a unique perspective to share here because if you're anything like me, you were raised in an environment where money was frugal, or you had to budget, or you were told to invest your savings, or in order to get rich, you heard all of the advice about investing in real estate, and I did not take that path, and I do not think that path is wise for most 20-year-olds. I don't even think school is wise for most 20-year-olds, but we'll get to that. The reason I'm making this video is because I always hated doing so much for so little. Waking up at 3 a.m. for a morning shift at my minimum wage job, going to school for 8 hours a day, knowing in the back of my mind that I was spending all this time to make as much or less than the average person in my future, putting in my all for someone else's company and making the same amount no matter how hard I worked. I adopted this mindset relatively early in my life, and when I explain this to people, people say that I was very observant as a child. It seemed that everywhere I looked, people were just unhappy. They were unhappy with their jobs, they were unhappy with their spouses, they were unhappy with what they did when they came home. They were just unhappy all around. And when I thought about it, it usually all went back to the job and everything revolving around money, right? So we have this desire to become a millionaire, and we have to work in order to survive in this modern world. But most people start working a job that they got because their parents told them to, or the status of a degree got the better of them as a child, or they just found themselves in it, right? They went through life unconsciously and then eventually woke up and they're like, what am I doing here? Why am I working so long for so little? And why does this lack such meaning? And I see these other people over here on the internet, or just in general, that are doing these things that I would like to do that seem a lot more fulfilling. But how do I get there? So as I observe these things in society in general, you can go to the grocery store, you can look at your coworkers at your job, you can look at your fellow schoolmates and talk to them and see if they're just regurgitating the things that their parents told them, or if you speak to someone and you can predict what they're going to say and you can just tell they're not an original thinker. When you speak to someone, you're speaking to the TV or the news or the latest memes on social media. And so you can tell that this mass programming, this mass conditioning of your mind is what is leading to unhappiness, and it can go much, much deeper than that, which we'll probably talk about in the next video on how to live a meaningful life, or the meaning crisis. Because of all of this, I always had the dream of becoming a millionaire. It sounded so enticing, something about that label, millionaire, the status, the freedom, the lack of stress. But now, as a person who has become one, I can tell you that all of those things are true. I'm not going to downplay it. I would rather be in the situation I'm in right now with being financially stable than I was in college, living with 7 other dudes, scraping by to pay a measly $300 for my 7th room of rent. And it's just nice to not have to worry about 99% of the purchases that you make. Of course, there's a thing called lifestyle inflation, and you can easily get trapped into buying a lot of cars. I've done that. Or you can get trapped into wanting to go even further and buy a yacht or a jet. I haven't had that desire yet, and I hope that that desire never comes. But even if it does, more money allows for more mistakes, and if you're a conscious individual, you can fix those problems. It exposes you to more experience in life, so you become a more well-rounded person because you have the experience of mistakes to correct. If you were to never make a mistake in your life, then how are you going to grow? So money, in my eyes, it goes hand in hand with personal development in how you make money and how you make more by starting a business and needing to expand your skill set and your mind and your personal growth. To meet that, entrepreneurship is a very spiritual thing if you perceive it that way. But just because you are a millionaire doesn't mean that you have other areas of your life developed. You can develop the financial domain and you can ignore the other domains like mind, body, spirit, and even your social life. In fact, if you look around, life is pretty terrible for people who only focus on money. So before we begin, keep that in mind. This may be positioned as a shallow video, how to make $1 million in your 20s, but hopefully I can bring a bit more depth to that. And if you watch my other videos, you understand that the depth and meaning behind making money is there. So understand that making money will only solve your money problems, and it will also make you realize that money problems aren't money problems, they're psychological problems. So in order to make more money, if you want to do it ethically and meaningfully, you're going to have to develop yourself quite a bit in the other domains of life. So we have to get started with what they don't teach you in school. If you're watching this, you were raised by people who lived and were conditioned by the old economy. Let's take a few examples. Invest your savings in your 401k and the stock market, said mom. Real estate is how 99% of people become millionaires, said the random wealthy guy in Scottsdale. Be frugal, save every last penny, collect coupons, don't make impulsive decisions, said the person with a boring life that nobody wants to live. Go to school and study something you don't care about to get a job, said almost everyone who doesn't understand the model of our public school system was adopted from a Prussian military state, reflecting the education given to slaves, and was created to keep people narrow-minded and dependent on the dominant social system while discouraging generalism, exploration, and building toward a unique vision. No thanks. We are living through a second renaissance happening in the digital space. The new rich understand that ideas are the new oil in a world where anyone can learn and build anything. And if you've been keeping up with something like indie hacking, you know non-coders are building MVP apps over a weekend with new AI tools. If you're not on X or Twitter or really paying attention to this space, it's pretty cool how apps like Replit and other AI-assisted coding assistants are helping kids, like 11-year-olds are literally building apps. Of course, that's not all there is to app development, so there isn't much to worry about for people that still specialize in AI-assisted coding and just building a ton of apps. You still need to be a generalist. You still need to understand business, marketing, sales, user retention, and everything that makes a business a success. Most programmers fail with building a startup because they don't have the marketing side down. They can't get users. And with more and more apps and more people being able to create things like content, the users or the audience is reserved for those who are more developed and more skilled. The new rich also understand that new generations are building wealth in the idea space, not the physical space. The physical space still matters, but it exists at a premium now, reserved for those who have already built cash flow. Digital space is infinite. Physical space is finite. So there are 3 things that you need to know about this era where people are becoming millionaires by posting their knowledge on the internet. The first is simply understanding the digital landscape. Now, this took a while to click for me because I was raised to think that I should just save and budget every penny. But that never really sat well in my mind because I was raised in the time where YouTube was becoming a thing and social media, MySpace, Facebook, that whole transition and everything like that. And you could see people making an income in another type of life. I could see someone else's lives in the vlogs they were posting to YouTube, and I could be like, wow, that is drastically different from my life. They're doing something that I never thought someone could do to make an income. Now I know it's possible. Now the belief is there. So that's what I hope to do with a lot of my videos, is to show, hey, people are actually doing this. You don't need to be stuck in the path that you were raised to go into your entire life. The first thing here about the digital landscape and just making an independent income in general is that if you want to make money outside of a job, you need to build and distribute the product. I will continue repeating this until everyone and their mother realize how dependent they are on the dominant paradigm for their survival because they didn't continue to learn after or before leaving the school system. If you kind of just walked through life or were dragged through life and went to school to get a job for the sake of status and then got to the job and realized, hey, I am only able to do this because I was trained into this specific thing, then you don't understand how business works. You don't understand the big picture of how you can make an independent income, because when people try to go from a job to making their own income, they're usually lost and realize that they have to learn an entire new skill stack, that they have to become a generalist after being trained into being a specialist for so long. The point here is that if you don't create a product to sell, you will continue selling a product for someone else. The only reason you are making any form of an income right now is because you play one specific role in a company that makes said money by selling a product or service. So here's a graphic to kind of explain this. On the left, you have an employee and you can see a little system. And let's think of this as like how the company makes money, right? You get a customer, they go here, 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 and then they pay you. If you see in the top left of the employee side, there's a circle with a black center, an empty center. On the right side, the entrepreneur, that circle goes around the entire system, meaning on the left, you play a specific role in the process of the company. On the right, you control every process of the company. So in order to do that well, you have to either hire people or you need to do it yourself. But either way, as a founder, CEO, whatever it may be, you need the vision. You need a generalized understanding of everything that goes on within a company and how to move that in a proper direction. So I always recommend starting out as a one-person business with freelancing, coaching, digital products, building an audience on social media, because that's the highest leverage way to do things nowadays. And it's not a dogmatic or ideological business model. It's just you posting your ideas and insights online to attract an audience like the people you already follow and are already immersed in every single day. You're just not one creating. It's that simple of a flip, consumer to creator. You're not making this realization that you are leeching off of this online creator economy and not contributing to it to take your piece of the pie from it. You're only operating from the mindset of a consumer, not a creator. And once you round that out, that's when you start to become some kind of a business owner. In other words, if you want to earn your freedom, first, you need a business. And second, you need a product by which people voluntarily trade their money for the value encapsulated in said product. Long story short, build something you can sell, or your survival and those stress and emotions will be like uncontrollable waves determined by a company, not yourself. The first point was you need a product. That's like, how else are you going to make money? The second point is the internet made business and education accessible to anyone with a Wi-Fi connection. If you are watching this, you can learn anything in 3 to 6 months, and that's even less time. If you're obsessed, you can learn something in 2 weeks. I learned to animate the Life as a Video Game video in 2 to 3 weeks. I learned almost everything, the principles of animation at least, so I can create most things. It may take a bit more time, but I can create most animations now simply because I went on this intense binge of learning and practice and building out a project, because learning isn't just about memorization, it's about building and practical application. I did that and I learned a new skill in 2 to 3 weeks. And if I wanted to continue with that skill, I could go even longer and become very good at it in 3 to 6 months. The next thing is you can write about your interests and attract an audience. Then you can teach your interests as a product or service with zero money to your name. You don't need money to start making money because you already have something valuable inside of your head. You don't need to build anything physical. You need to put the value, you need to string together the value in your head from your experience and interests and the things that you already find valuable. That's why they're in your head. And that's why you stored them in your head, because they're valuable to you. So you take those skills, interests, ideas, whatever they are, and you put them into a digital medium by learning how to write and learning how to sell. Or you can freelance with a marketable skill until you feel the need to productize and teach. So if you feel like you don't have any expertise or skill in your head that you use in the domains of health, wealth, relationships, and happiness, if you're not into fitness, if you're not into nutrition or health, if you're not into business or any kind of skill like productivity or programming, or you don't have anything to teach other people, and if you learn something from someone else, then you can also teach it. Or if you're not a very social person, or you just suck at relationships or other, you probably have something that you can sell. But if you don't, then go the route of learning a marketable skill and starting a freelance business or an agency and do done for you work until you realize, hey, this isn't too leverageable. I built myself into a second 9 to 5. I don't like working for clients because I want to work on my own projects. I want to create my own videos. I want to create my own writing. I want to create my own designs. And you do that under a personal brand. So if you want to become a millionaire, you can take the long route that your parents and teachers taught you, but most of them aren't millionaires. So why are you listening to them? Every single skill that I actually use today did not come from my degree. Sure, learning to speak and refine my handwriting and maybe some skills here and there. Most of the skills that I use today were learned from courses over the time scale of 2 to 3 years where I spent building and failing at businesses while supplementing with specific courses related to those, like a dropshipping course, like a copywriting course, like whatever it may be. You just take courses and then you practice them, and eventually you string them all together into a business, because you need, as a one-person business, you need at least a general understanding of every single skill that goes into that. So if you take the route of the one-person business that I teach, where is building a personal brand with content and writing, and then building a education product, whether that be coaching, consulting, courses, digital products, whatever it may be, to build cash flow until you can invest in building physical products or software or whatever you want to build. And so in order to do that, you need to understand 1, branding, 2, content, 3, product, 4, promotions, and other auxiliary or complementary skills within those, like copywriting and other things. So by starting a personal brand or as a creator on whatever platform you choose, you then have something to actually help you learn the skills. You have a business to apply all of your learning to. So even if you're not starting out right and just going super hard on creating content and creating a product or creating a freelance service or whatever it may be, start the personal brand and then start learning so that you can actually practice what you're learning on the personal brand by writing content, refining, getting better over time. Now, the second point before we get into how to actually make $1 million is that the labor theory of value doesn't work. This is extremely important because you need to shift your mindset. Your mindset or your worldview is what allows you to perceive certain opportunities in the world, and that alone influences the actions you take and your behavior. So you aren't acting and you are distracted simply because your worldview isn't complete. Your perspective is partial. You aren't seeing the opportunity. You don't have the motivation to wake up in the morning. You don't have the clarity to actually get what you want done because your perspective is missing pieces. And so in order to round out that perspective, we need to add in this piece of it, which is that the labor theory of value doesn't work. The thing you were conditioned into your entire life doesn't work. You can work hard at anything, but that doesn't mean it's useful to the progress of humanity. This is the delusion of hard work. You can put 4 years of work into getting a degree. You can put 10 years of work into climbing a corporate ladder, and still you won't be paid anywhere close to what you want. So rather than taking your future into your own hands, you whine and complain. Maybe you don't, but most people whine and complain. I deserve to be paid more. I've spent 14 years working hard and this is all I get for it. I barely have any time for my family. I don't have enough to take a vacation. I slave away with no light at the end of the tunnel. But the complainers of the world are missing one crucial piece of the puzzle. The labor theory of value is that you should be paid for the amount of work you do, to feel as if you've jumped through hoops, to feel like you deserve something. But that's not how reality works. Money is a unit of value. Value is a measure of how much people care about what you do. How valuable you are equals the magnitude of problems you solve, the results of the solutions you create, and your ability to get people to care about your creation. That's worth screenshotting or highlighting somewhere. If you aren't happy with how much you make, it may be time to take a brutally honest look at what you contribute to the world. It does not make sense to pay someone based on the amount of work they do. It does make sense to pay someone based on the level of problem they solve. Why? I can work hard for 1 year at writing to become an author, but 1 year isn't enough to justify $100,000 or more of compensation. Many times, that writing can be perceived as less valuable than a burger flipper making minimum wage. It's not what you do, it's how you do it and who you do it for. I can write a book, but if nobody actually likes the book, then why should I get paid for the time I spent writing the book? This is why jobs pay you so little, is because you're doing work that they determine valuable for you. You're not creating the value. They created the value that people are paying for, and you're just helping execute one specific piece of that. You only make as much money as other people care about what you've done within that year of, say, writing the book. That is how your creation benefits them so that they use it to solve a problem, change their life, and bring progress to humanity. Complaining about not being paid enough is not going to get you paid. In fact, it will probably get you fired or ignored or just hated by anyone you come into contact with because they are thinking, okay, what are you going to do about it? The only option is to take matters into your own hands. The third thing we need to talk about, and we're getting into the actual real money-making advice here, or really the key to becoming a millionaire, and that is passive income versus cash flow. And for most people that hear that, they're like, ooh, I want passive income. I want that so bad. I just want to do nothing all day. I don't want to work. It's either I want to work and make money according to how long I work, or I don't want to work at all and make a ton of money just so I can do whatever I do, just be distracted all day and live a meaningless life. But for 99% of people, passive income is a pipe dream, especially if you don't have cash flow to invest in building passive income. If you want to invest in the stock market, if you want to invest in real estate, if you don't have an exorbitant amount of cash flow in order to do so, you're probably not going to make as much as you think you are, or it's just going to be a long, slow grind, and you are better off spending your time anyways, just building cash flow that is more than that. Like, as an example, I have been investing in Bitcoin and other crypto for however many years now, since it started to get hyped up, not at the very beginning of Bitcoin, because then I'd be rich. But most of my investments have just been sitting there, and I've been sitting around waiting for people to say, oh, Bitcoin is going to 100K, it's going to 1 million. And I'm sure it will someday. But for the how long has it been? 3 years since my money has been sitting in there and seeing a bit of growth, but not that much, maybe like 100, 200, 300,000. I don't pay too much attention. But considering I could just build and launch a product and make 2 million off of that, if 3 years, wow, okay, never mind. I could make 5 million off of that. What's a better option? 5 million in cash flow or 300,000 in passive income when I have 500,000 in Bitcoin at the time? So make it make sense. And you need a big picture understanding and perspective of what's going on with your money, because you think investments are going to save you when they're not. You can make more money just by building and selling a product. And you're afraid to build and sell a product because you're not as valuable as you think you are, and you haven't learned and practiced and built things that lead to failures and mistakes that allow you to improve and actually get better. You're not going through the process of trial and error on a daily basis, and that is the only way to actually become valuable. Learning and just reading all day isn't doing anything for you except for filling your mind with things to test. Now, with a cash flow business, all of this stuff I'm saying, I would consider investing in my course, Digital Economics. It is a more meaningful approach to a lot of the make money online products you see nowadays. So if you are potentially looking at six-figure agency courses or most make money online courses, just check out Digital Economics. I think you'll enjoy it if you vibe with the more philosophical, spiritual, meaningful, fulfilling lines of work, while still being able to build a high leverage cash flow business that we're talking about. Now, the thing here is that most people aren't going to outpace whatever happens with inflation. If inflation continues, most people aren't going to outpace inflation with their investments. So your only option is to make excess. It's to make more. It's to make enough to fuel your ideal lifestyle, plus enough to build what you want to see in the world, whether that be a new product or software or whatever it may be, a project that you can work on. You need money to fuel that. Potentially, if you just want to make enough to live your ideal lifestyle, perfectly fine. You can achieve that quite quick. And by quite quick, I mean maybe 6 to 12 months, maybe 2 to 3 years. If you actually dedicated to it, for sure, a lot less time than a 4-year degree. And most people don't think that is too long to educate yourself, but most people think, okay, when I start taking a course, 2 months of study, that's way too long. I can't stick to that myself because I don't have a little teacher making me show up to class every day and do the actual learning. That's the problem. So with this, and on the topic of trial and error, a cash flow business comes down to simple cybernetics and mathematics. We're getting into the good stuff finally. Cybernetics is that a system self-regulates to achieve a goal. In other words, when you set your mind on a goal, listen to feedback, and correct your actions according to that feedback, you will achieve the goal. Cybernetics illustrates that low intelligence systems, or minds, or people, are the ones who quit rather than pivot. They aren't smart enough to realize that any problem can be solved or diverted by evolving the goal they are pursuing. If you want to learn more about intelligence, or how to become intelligent, or how to think intelligently so that you can achieve more of what you want out of life, because the Naval quote, the only true test of intelligence is that you can get what you want out of life. That's what the video is about. So watch How to Become More Intelligent Than 99% of People on my channel. With that, the goal determining the actions you take and the opportunities available to you, think big, think digital, think infinite, and give your mind room to connect the dots, because you only have so much time in the day. You can go off and build a coffee shop, or a chain of coffee shops and be limited to maybe $1 million a year in personal income, whatever that comes out to, and you have the same amount of time as someone who went and built a digital online business with a lot higher income cap. So that's something to think about, is if you're wanting to go the digital business route, maybe set the goal of $1 million a year, so that way you're actually working to that specific goal. You're noticing and studying the strategies that allow you to achieve that thing, because it frames your mind. It frames what you are interested in and where your curiosity lies. So that's cybernetics, is just trial and error and having a big enough goal to move towards. The next thing is mathematics, which is just a simple understanding of the system itself, the way you're moving, the numbers of the system that you are moving towards the goal. That's a bad way of putting it, but you get the point. So if you want to make $1 million in 1 year's time, just break it down so you can start actually creating the system. $1 million divided by 12 months equals $83,333 per month. That amount divided by 30 days equals $2,777 per day. Now, there are a few ways to actually make that much a day. First is sell 18 $150 products a day. You can sell 111 $25 products a day. You can land one $5,000 client every other day, or you can land one $10,000 client every 4 days, or a combination of both. So 1 to 2 clients a week and a few product sales a day. Now, of course, these things take time to build. This isn't some get rich quick video. This is my video. For if you've watched me, like, we're not about that here. So this alone determines a lot of your decision making, because you need to generate the traffic and you need to build the product that would allow you to do those things, to either make how many was it? 18 $150 product sales a day, or a combination of a $5,000 service plus like 5 product sales a day, something like that. So that's going to determine how you write content, what platform you post to, like YouTube or a podcast, or the ecosystem of how you are getting your readers or your followers to your products or services, and what you need to learn accordingly to get there. So I can't tell you exactly what to learn. I'm just saying, what's your goal? If it's $1 million a year, okay, how can you do that? And now how can you start working and learning towards it? So let's assume that you are skilled at social media and you know how to generate traffic. You can get 50,000 to 100,000 views per YouTube video, or 1 to 5 million impressions on social media like Instagram or X per month. And of course, you'll have the occasional anomaly of more or less impressions, right? So your baseline is like 50 to 100,000 views and like 1 million impressions. To make 18 sales a day on a $150 product, you would need to send 720 people to a product page or sales page with a 2.5% conversion rate. So now it becomes fairly digestible. You need a product to sell. You need a landing page with copywriting and sales jargon on it that results in a 2.5% conversion rate. That means 2.5% that are going to that page when 2.5% of them buy. So if you get 720 people to that page every single day, then you are going to make $1 million in a year, more or less. So if you have 1 million impressions on social media per month, or even 10,000 views per video, do you think you could get, if you get 10,000 views on a video every single day, which sure, it takes time to build up to that, but if you can get 720 of them to just click on your product page, then you make $1 million a year by mathematics. So if you can't do that with 4 to 8 videos a month, or a few posts on social media a day, and build up to that over the course of 1, 2, 3 years, then I don't know what to tell you. That is a skill issue. The question now is, how do we do this? So we need to talk about the 2 levers that lead to making $1 million in your 20s. You need a product or service, and you need distribution, an audience. Beyond that, the entirety of your success comes down to experimentation and iteration, trial and error. Now, you can supplement with courses like 2-Hour Writer or Mental Monetization for audience and product, or distribution and product. That's why I built them, is because they're the 2 main things that you need. But you have to understand that courses are simply processes to experiment, so you can extract what works for you from them faster than finding it on your own. That's an important point of what a course actually is. A course isn't a band-aid. It's not a cure. It's education. It's discovery. It's something you can dive into and go through and realize, oh, okay, these are the things that make sense to me. I'm going to implement them now. But that's not the end of the road. You don't go to college and take one class and then expect to get a job. The same goes with this. You don't go into the new economy where education is based on courses that teach the jobs that those people created, like social media. You don't just take one course. I've taken maybe, when I got into programming, I took maybe like 20 or 30 programming courses. I took about 4 to 5 business courses. I haven't read any business books. A lot of it came down to just actually doing the thing and building something, and that's when I actually started to learn. But it was nice to have processes to experiment with. So the first one, product, which is the only way to make an independent income. You need a product. You need a product or service. When I say product, I'm also encapsulating service in that. You just need something to sell. If you don't have something to sell, nobody's going to give you money. So if you don't have a product or service, you're not on your way to a business. That's what you need to do. Now, I want to go over a conversation that I had with someone in the Cortex free community. Cortex is my software writing app in Second Brain. It's like a Notion competitor, but we're not going the Notion route. We're going the creator route. So if you want to check that out, go to cortex.co, but the community is at community.cortex.co. Cortex is with a K. So the conversation I was having started like this. I'm not confident in my abilities to sell a product. I have results, but I didn't use a framework or specific steps. I kind of just did it. So I'm not sure how I could help someone else. And this could apply to mental health, fitness, programming, any skill, whatever it may be. What he's saying here, the person I had the conversation with, is that he doesn't feel confident in his ability to sell a product because what he would sell in the product, the skill or the expertise, the results that he's gotten for himself in his own life, they didn't come from step by step or a framework. It was unconscious competence. It was him just doing it. And this is the same for a lot of people. They think that they can't sell a product because they've gotten results, but they don't have a process or system to replicate those results. But what you don't realize is that's where you start building a product. How does anyone create a product? You don't just plagiarize someone else's framework, you create your own. Creating your own requires real-world feedback from customers after you experiment for yourself. So you create an MVP or minimum viable product, you get a first round of customers or free users, you listen to feedback and gauge results, and then you implement feedback and attempt to make your product better. Then once you have results, you can market harder and be confident you are able to do this. And this is the same thing with a beginner freelancer landing clients. If you ever doubt your ability to sell a product or service, just think of what you would do as a freelancer. What does a freelancer do? You reach out to friends and family. You say, hey, I'm a web designer. Can I need to get work under my belt. Can I do this for you for free or at a very low cost to you? And then you start practicing your skills and you get better and you see if your web design is actually valuable to the other person. And then you start branching out more. You start doing more direct outreach on social media or cold email. And then you build an audience by teaching web design. And then you have clients coming to you, and eventually you're so good at that thing that people just are paying you $10,000 to $15,000 for a website at a time. So you don't start at the $10,000 to $15,000 mark. You start in the beta phase. You start in the testing phase. You start with building something and expecting it not to be valuable. And then you have to persuade people to try it out and help you out by giving you feedback. And then with that feedback, you improve it. And then you start charging. And then you get feedback again. And then you improve it. And then you start charging more, so on and so forth. My entire product philosophy is this. Build a product you've used before, but better, solve your own problems and sell the solution. Build a product you want, but doesn't exist. Most people should start with the first one, advance to the second, and once they have cash flow, move on to the third. Again, that one is important. I would rewind, screenshot, or just write it down. But you have to realize that you can create any product you want. How many planners can you find on Amazon? 1 billion. So you can create one too by purchasing 3 to 5 planners, using them and noticing what doesn't flow and writing down that problem or roadblock, and then mapping out your own planner that is a bit better, using it and improving it over a week or two, then packaging it up and selling it. Then you listen to customer feedback, make it better. Simple. Now you have the ability to make money because you have a product. But you need one more thing in order to sell that product sustainably and reach the $1 million in your 20s, which is distribution, which is how to survive going into the future. We will start with a quote from Jack Butcher. Build distribution, then build whatever you want. What he's saying is you build a distribution channel, which there are many types, as we'll go over, but an audience. In the case that we talk about, the highest leverage is just building an audience, building an email list from that audience, and then you have people to promote to based on what you talk about and can help those people with. Distribution is your potential to get what you build in front of people who care. Now that we have a product we built, we need to get it in front of people. The most accessible way to get in front of people is on the internet. The front end of the internet is media, and since legacy media is dying, you have a few options. With this, there are 3 types of distribution: built, borrowed, and bought. You build distribution by growing an audience with internet content. Then you can and should take it a step further by deplatforming your audience. You deplatform by funneling your audience to community or newsletter. These can be free or paid. The thing here is that social media platforms can go poof at any time, so you kind of want to secure yourself, right? If you have 100,000 followers and you get suspended, you're kind of screwed, so you should be funneling them into your newsletter so you have direct contact with the people that want to receive what you talk about. You borrow distribution by leveraging other people's audience, community, or newsletter. So you can be hosted on someone else's podcast when they have an audience and listeners of that podcast. And when you talk about your offers or promote your offers, people are probably going to go search them up and buy them. Or in many cases, if your ideas are so unique and they're so good, you may be mentioned on people's podcasts or in people's newsletters without you even being there, right? I quote Naval and Jack Butcher and other people quite often. And when I quote people, I guarantee that some of you go and research those people. And this is the game you eventually want to play, is you just want the ideas that you post as content or in your newsletters or in your videos to be so good that people share them for you, and you build an audience that way. The third method of distribution is to just buy distribution. And there's a few ways to do this. The various methods of paid ads, Google ads, Facebook ads, YouTube ads, etc. Those are the obvious ways. But you can also buy sponsorship spots on newsletters and podcasts and other things of that nature, or even on YouTube channels, right? And then you can also buy paid shares on things like X or Instagram. And this is more like under the radar. This isn't an official thing that you buy from the platform like Facebook. You buy it from the creator. So it's always interesting to me when people say like, oh, paid reposts or shares, like that's not authentic. And it's like a paid sponsorship is. And having someone share my post if they would anyways, I've broken this down a lot before. Go watch my other videos, like how to grow on social media without an audience, or how smart creators build an audience. One of those things, how to build an audience, that topic. So those are the types of distribution that you can get your content and your products spread so people see them and buy them. When I talked about earlier, 2.5% conversion rate on a landing page with your product, and you need to get 720 people to that. You do that through the distribution methods that we just listed out. But the thing here is, and the thing that most people forget, is that your audience is not just your audience. I want you to think about it like this, because I don't only have access to my following. I have indirect access to every single person that follows the people that are following me. So if I have 100,000 followers and those people each have 300 people following them, 300 times 100,000, I now have indirect access to 300,000 people. So that's your plan, is to get your content and products spread throughout that network that you're building. So a small audience that is 1,000 followers, and most people have on average 300 to let's say 1,000 followers. The people following you also have an audience of consumers that you're trying to get in front of with shares and reposts. And creators follow other creators. So I have access to my audience, but Gordon Ramsay and John Cena follow me. So with the right placement of an idea or a product and them seeing it can get spread to so many more people, or just open up opportunities for me to partner with them or promote with them, which I don't think I'll ever do. But then that's like super massive high scale celebrity. But there are many more within the 300,000 to 5 million follower range that are following me because they like my ideas. And I know many of you can go to my profile and think, hey, I could write that too. So my question is, why aren't you? I'm not saying take the ideas and copy them. I'm saying just Start putting out your interests and ideas on the internet. So we will end this video with my biggest business lesson, which is imitate, then innovate. This is something I want you to remember anytime you decide to start something new. Whether you're building a product or writing content to build distribution, you only need one heuristic to guide your decision making. Imitate, then innovate. Sell what's already selling. Write what's already performing. Add a dash of personal experience and perspective to make it unique. Stick your hand in the attention that's already flowing. Learn what works, learn the principles, have another product or piece of writing open as you build or write. Pay attention to the structure, not the content of the product or writing. You aren't plagiarizing a single word. You're emulating the essence of what works. You're extracting the lesson from those things and trying to replicate it. Once you see results, and if you're doing this correctly with awareness, you will. Once you see results, and if you're doing this correctly with awareness, you will then attempt to create something of your own. That's it for this one. If you want to check out 2-Hour Writer to learn high impact writing, a high value skill, check out 2-Hour Writer. If you want to learn how to build a digital product with the knowledge you have in your head, check out Mental Monetization. If you want a Life's Work Masterclass that includes both courses of the ones I previously mentioned, check out Digital Economics. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.